Hello, I just want to talk about mental illness from 1960 until now. Why mental health? Mental health affects a lot of people. I have some statistics later on, but it's also impacted my family. My mom suffers from mental illnesses, my sister, and even myself, and I know it's already been talked about in this class as well. Um, so, some statistics about mental health. 1 in 5 adults have a mental health condition. Youth with severe depression has increased from 5.9% in 2012 to 8.2% in 2015. The greatest decrease in uninsured adults with mental illnesses was seen in states that expanded Medicaid. 56% of Americans with mental illnesses do not receive treatment. And then Missouri, 7.7%, South Carolina, 2.7%, and Kansas, which is a 2.4%, had the largest increase in adults with AMI who are uninsured. And of course, what these 3 states have in common is that they did not adopt the Medicaid expansion. What that means is, like, I know Iowa, as long as your income is below a certain level, you qualify for Medicaid, which is state government funded health insurance. This is great because that gives people with mental illnesses the funding and the insurance that they need to get the treatments that they need. And then to move on, I want to talk about it from 2 different point of views, from a history point of view and from a social view. To start out with the history point of view, in 1963, Congress passed the Community Mental Health Centers Act and Mental Retardation Facilities and Community Mental Health Centers Construction Act. With these acts, it started the deinstitutionalization of the insane asylums. So that moved mental health patients from insane asylums and facilities like that to community centers and homes. What happened was a lot of them actually became homeless because they really could not afford to go to a center or a home, or they didn't really have anywhere to go. Their family did not support them. A lot of factors went into that. And then in 1964 was a mental health bill. 1966 was Medicare and Medicaid acts. Those just helped get some of the funding into mental health and put in provisions for mental health as well. 1971, Only Human was aired on more than 150 TV stations. What this was is that it was a TV series or a show that helped promote mental health awareness. Put it in the homes, put it so everybody could see it, help people become more aware that it is a problem, and it was a problem, and it will continue to be a problem. 1981, Life magazine ran an article titled "Emptying the Madhouse, the Mentally Ill Have Become Our City's Lost Souls." What that was to show the media was really starting to get into it. That they were showing the issues that mental illnesses had and how a lot of the mentally ill patients that were in institutions are actually now homeless. A lot of it focuses on how there are a lot of homeless people that are mentally ill. And then in 1985 was the passing of the Protection and Advocacy for Mentally Ill Act by Congress. This was huge. The act states that a state is required to have an advisory board, and that directs from each state must report to the Secretary on the activities, accomplishments, and expenditures of the system annually. This act also established a procedure for determining whether information from an individual's health record may be disclosed to him or her. So with that, people's medical records weren't being discussed with them. They weren't being told what they had. It wasn't being discussed in a family. It wasn't being taken care of the way it needed to have been. And then a major part of this act is also that each state should review and revise, if necessary, its laws to ensure that the mental health patients receive the protection and services that the patients require. So that was a huge milestone for the mentally ill. In 1987, there was a photographic exhibit depicting the human side of the homeless in America. This was put together by Mental Health America and the Families of the Homeless. Just shows more on the homeless again, that a lot of them were still the mentally ill. In 1990 was that Mental Health America developed the Americans with Disabilities Act. With this act, they were helping Desert Storm veterans and their families learn how to readjust to life at home, and then they developed this act, which protects mentally and physically disabled Americans from discrimination in areas such as employment, transportation, telecommunications, and state and local government services. And then in 2010 was the Affordable Health Care Act. This helped get more funding, but some people still fall into the coverage gaps. And those coverage gaps, like I had mentioned before, were the ones where Medicaid wasn't expanded. Like Missouri is one of those. And then in 2014, something I don't have up here, a bill was made that for $115 million to go towards mental health initiatives. Although that is a very large chunk of money, and it was distributed, there's still some issues that need to be addressed with the mental health. And the resources are still lacking severely. And then I want to get into like the more social views. Throughout the years, in 1960, kind of up until the 80s, when that Protection and Advocacy Bill or Act was put in place, nobody talked about it. Families didn't want to discuss it. They wanted everything to be kept quiet. Sometimes they even disowned family members. But in the 1960s, government started to move in. This is where they did the deinstitutionalization. This was a huge movement. I see it as a good and a bad thing. I think there does need to be more mental health facilities. We don't have enough care for those that are mentally ill, and especially the ones that are very severe and need to be placed in homes. In 1970, I have another kind of statistics. The average person, from a study in Indiana University, they said the average person is 41.9% unwilling to marry into a family of a troubled person, but is 72.2% unwilling with a person that has schizophrenia. So they're more unwilling with a schizophrenic, but they're also more unwilling with a troubled person. So they were starting to accept and realize that it's around us. In 1980s, that act was put into place. It was a huge milestone. People were actually starting to get the protection that they needed, and some resources were starting to get divided. 90s, people with mental illnesses started to actually get jobs. They were starting to be seen more as people instead of kind of animal-like. And people and families started talking about it. It became more wide known and something that we actually started working towards helping those people. Now we see them everywhere. 1 in 5 people. So people in this class have it. People you work with, family members. It's all around us, and it's something that's definitely not going to go away. Some course concepts with Logos. Mental illness is not going to go away. We need to do more about it. It all ties in with the rest of them too. It just 42.5 million adults. Most everyone knows someone suffering. And then with Ethos, Missouri has yet to expand their Medicaid law. That would really help. Our government needs to do more. We need to put more in a budget for the mentally ill. We need our Health Care Act to be reformed. We don't need those coverage gaps. It's everybody in the world has it. Everybody knows somebody that suffers from it. It's something that's prevalent. It's not going to go away. Like I've continued to say over and over again, it's a growing issue. And then in conclusion with that, we've come a long way with mental illnesses and how people have viewed it and how they treat people. But there still are those few out there that still perceive it as something you don't talk about, or that those people shouldn't be in the community. And mental illness ranges from a wide variety of issues. It could be anxiety and depression, and even those have varying groups within them. And then it goes to bipolar and schizophrenia and more major issues. So it's a wide variety, and those people are around us and with us every day, and it's something that needs more funding, more help. We've got to do something to keep it from getting out of hand. Thank you.